notifications are coming up. Someone else is here, but I can't tell who. Well, welcome. I'm just going to start the video. My name is Nicole Petrandria Huff for CocoHuff.com, where we talk about everything in and about the kitchen. I have some feedback. Hi, David. So again, Coco Huff, CocoHough.com, and also on Facebook and everywhere else as well, where we talk about everything in and about the kitchen, including kitchen design, which I've been doing for 18 years in the New York and New Jersey area, and now talking about how to make your time in the kitchen the most fun it can be, the most delicious, less stressful, and how to get the most flavor out of everything that you're cooking, and to use everything that you bring into your kitchen to the best use possible. Teresa is with us. Welcome. Teresa, I'll come back to you. I'm going to have you post some pictures if you don't mind. But tonight we're making a risotto, which is a rice dish from Milan that includes some aromatics, some rice, white wine, butter, and Parmesan cheese is the typical recipe to get a kind of a creamy, delicious result. And the reason I include this as one of the essential things to learn is, there's this base recipe that we're going to talk about, and then there are a million different ways to sort of jazz it up. So Vadim is here, I think. I can't really tell today. I'm going to have you post some pictures too, Vadim, if you're here. But risotto, it's a versatile dish. You can do this for a weeknight family dinner. You can do it for a fancy, for entertaining, for a fancy dinner. So we're going to talk about different ways to do that. I want to start with the ingredients I'm going to show you for the basic dish, and then the things that I'm adding tonight. But before I do that, let me say any questions are welcome, any conversation, anything you want to type in there is totally welcome. Hi Lynn, welcome again. We're just starting our risotto. And I love the back and forth while I'm talking. So anything kitchen design, cooking, what we're doing now, anything we've done in past weeks. I've had some awesome feedback this week with pictures, and I love seeing the pictures. It makes me happy. So, okay, so to get started, like I said, we're going to talk about a basic risotto first. This is sort of what you would do every time, and then there's an order of operations for it as well. So we have the rice itself, which is really the where camera am I on? Okay, it's the heart of the dish, and it's a short grain rice. So this is an Arborio rice, and I'm going to hold this up so you can you see that a little bit better? They're sort of plump little grains of rice. You can also do this with a medium grain, but the traditional is a short grain rice, not a long grain like you would have as a side dish on a normal rice. And the reason for that is because it has a higher starch content. So as you're cooking with the method that we're going to do, the starch is being pulled out and becomes the sauce. That's how you end up with this creamy result. If you did this with a regular rice, you'd end up with rice and maybe a little bit of starchiness, but much more separate, fluffy rice. Like sometimes you want that, sometimes you want this. So that's what you accomplish with the short grain rice. Vadim says, yes, he is here. I'm so glad he says he's looking forward to these. I am too. And Vadim, this week, you've made the stew. This week he made the stuffed eggplant, but as a casserole. Could you post a picture of that? It was awesome. Like the eggplant on the bottom and everything layered as one big dish. And I was like, that's brilliant. So, and Kelly's here. Hello. So we have our rice. We have our chicken stock, same one that we've been making, on the second video. This is about 5 cups. We may need more. You could just add more stock, or you could add a little bit of water at that point, because we will have used a lot of stock and have that flavor in already. I have some shallots here. You could use shallots or onions, garlic, of course, butter. Let me put you on this one so you can see some butter, and white wine. So these are the essentials, basically. If you're making a risotto, these are the things you need. And then we're going to do some other things too today. And let me say, it doesn't have to be chicken stock. This could be vegetable stock, It could be fish stock. We're going to talk about that as well. But I know Jen is on here every week and says she's vegetarian, and she's been a loyal follower. So to make this vegetarian, you would only change a few things, and one of them would be to use a vegetable stock or a mushroom stock, especially because we're making a mushroom risotto. So first things first, Vadim said he will post a picture. Yes, excellent. First things first, our liquid needs to be hot. So I'm pouring this chicken stock into a pan that you can't see. There we go. And we're going to warm it up while we start everything else going. So this is 5 cups. Hopefully that'll be enough. There's something in there. Oops. It's gone. We'll get that later. So we're warming up the stock. That just helps it to incorporate better as we stir it into our rice. So the basic technique here is we're cooking our aromatics, toasting the rice, and this is the same every time. Cooking the aromatics, toasting the rice, adding some white wine to deglaze, and then adding our stock a little bit at a time, and stirring, stirring, stirring. So this is where people get intimidated, I think, is that, you know, the reputation is that you'll be standing there over the pot forever, and it does take a while, but there are ways to break it into steps. And if you heat your liquid the way we're doing now, it's not quite so bad. It doesn't take quite so long. So, all right, we've got our liquid heating, and we're going to start our aromatics in this pan over here. So let's turn that one on, clear some space. Actually, take it back. We're going to start with, let me show you what's extra for today. So we're doing a mushroom risotto. Oopsie, pulling that away. A mushroom risotto with pancetta. So I have some baby bello mushrooms, which are just, you know, portobellos before they grow up. You could easily use white mushrooms or a mushroom blend for that. I have some pancetta. This came diced already, which I think is a good convenience food. You can just throw this in, we'll chop it up a little bit. Pancetta is actually made as a roll. It's like a spiraled pork belly product, but it's not smoked like bacon, so it has a slightly different flavor profile from bacon, and it has black pepper in the middle. So if you make a spaghetti carbonara, that's where the black pepper comes from for that dish traditionally. So we have that, and we have some dried porcini mushrooms. So what I want to do right now, and these 3 things are optional. This is what's making it this dish. Oh, and I said I was going to do peas too. I'll get those out in a second. But I'm going to take some of these dried mushrooms and stick them in our stock while it's heating up. So we're going to get, those won't end up in the main dish. Maybe they'll get rehydrated and we'll save them for something else. But I want to give some extra flavor to make this mushroomy. Oh, that was like 7 or 8 pieces. And we'll let that come up to temperature. And now our pan is getting hot, and I'm going to pour about 3/4 of this pancetta, maybe a little less, in there. And start stirring that around. So if you are skipping the pancetta, Jen, if you want to skip the pancetta, just start a little olive oil in here, and then get your shallots into the olive oil. So the pancetta gives the flavor, but it's also going to render its fat. So we're going to need less oil, and that's just one extra step ahead of time. I'm wondering if anyone is cooking along. I don't think Stacy's here today. If you are, let me know. And I'm going to dice up these mushrooms to get them in after the, how do I want to do this? Yeah. Save the stems for your mushroom stock. And I'm just going to slice crosswise. Nope, I take it back. If you're following along, don't do that next. We're going to do the shallots to get them in with the, I jumped the gun, get them in with the pancetta. So here are our shallots. We have 2 totally different sizes. Let's see how they look. Cut off the root end, peel it down, hold your knife down so it peels, and the root end. And then you can sort of separate the 2 bulbs more easily. If they still have skin on them, I make a little slit on the flat end, just a shallow one, and get that top layer off like that. All right, save that for stock too. Throw that all over here right now. And then our little was 2 in it, but it didn't peel. Let's see. So I'll just just score the top of it and do that. There we go. The skin is off. Separate them and dice them up. You could use onions in this case. Shallots, leeks are very popular in a risotto. Any aromatic like this that gives a nice flavor to start with. All right, slicing them long ways. And then I'm going to slice them crosswise. These are a little bigger. Let me get those in the pan. So you can see our pancetta. I don't know, can you see that? It's kind of bright. Our pancetta is rendering its fat, and now I'm going to start the shallots cooking in that fat. I'm going to add a little more olive oil there, and I'll tell you why in a second. But, all right, large shallot. I'm cutting almost to the end, the way we did with the onion a couple weeks ago. Not all the way to the end so it holds together. And then I'm going to go across this way. Whoops, that fell apart a little. Too far. And then across this way so we end up with a diced shallot pretty quickly. Even if it falls apart, just hold it together. Like that. And one more time here. With an onion, you leave the root end on to do that. With a shallot, it's a toss-up because it's easier to peel without the root, but it would stay together better with it. All right, we've got all of our shallots. Our chicken stock is heating up, so that we'll have warm liquid to pour in with the rice later. And all these shallots are going in with our pancetta. And we're going to put some garlic in there too. Alright, so we have, I'd say maybe 2 cloves of garlic would be good in here. You know I'm a garlic fan. Alright, 2 cloves, clear this off. And then we'll get to our mushrooms. I'm going to put some olive oil in the mushroom pan, which is heating up right now. I just like my mushrooms to go into a really hot pan so they get brown and crispy on the outside. Hi, Ellen. Ellen is joining us from Florida. I'm so happy to see you. I'm making a risotto right now. We have, I'm going to show Ellen and anyone who just joined, some pancetta and shallots over here. We have our chicken stock warming up in a separate pan, and we're about to put in, and we're warming up our oil for mushrooms over here. And we're about to crush our garlic. So smush the garlic to peel it. I think I did that one already. Smush. Get the peels off. Yep, did that one. And then, same as the shallot, cut lengthwise. Watch your fingers. If there's like a hard end, you cut that off. There's a little bit right there. And then turn it. Keep it together as much as you can. And cut crosswise. And then run your knife over it a couple times like this. Because this is going to be cooked for a while, I mean, you don't want big chunks of garlic, but you don't need it down to a paste. It's going to infuse all the liquid and the rice and everything. Vadim asked if I put, that's a good question, Vadim. All right, so Vadim asked if I put oil in with the pancetta and shallots, and I have not yet, but I'm about to. So it kind of is going to depend on how much fat the pancetta let out, but it didn't really let out that much. So what you want, all right, our garlic just went in here. So we have pancetta, shallots, and garlic, and you can see on the bottom of the pan, we're starting to get this nice caramelized fond that we talked about so many times in the first couple of videos, and we're going to deglaze that later the way we do with our pan sauce and everything else. So that adds to the flavor of everything we're doing. You want that. That is the best. So to answer Vadim's question, I'm about to put the oil in. pint DC. And the reason you want quite a bit, not a ton, but a good amount of oil or fat in this part, in this beginning stage, is that we're going to toast the rice in the fat. So we want to toast it with the aromatics and enough fat that it sort of absorbs that, which gives the outside of the short grain rice a crust. You can't really see the crust, but enough of a crust that it remains al dente after we put all this liquid in. So that's another reason why we use this kind of rice. And that's one of the most important parts of this whole technique, is that you want to toast your rice before you add liquid. So if you've ever had so I'm about to pour in, I guess that was about 1/3 of a cup more of oil into the fat that rendered. It wasn't really that much fat that rendered. So, and I'm getting, again, like a nice caramelized bottom on this pan that we're going to deglaze. That smells so good already. Stacy, you're here. I was just wondering if you were cooking along tonight. But I'm glad to see you. We're in the middle of our risotto. We've just added our garlic, and I'm about to put the rice in. So I have, now you can probably see, I have the oil mixed in there, and I'm pouring 2 cups of Arborio rice in with that. Stir it all together. And don't jump the gun on this step. We want to let it have a good toastiness. I was reading different things about this, and I think this is actually true, but I never really thought about it before. Someone said you can tell when the rice is toasted because it starts to sound different. It makes a different sound in the pan. So I'm going to pay attention today and see if that's actually happening. Oh, our chicken stock is boiling away. If you can see this over here, that is some chicken stock with dried porcini mushrooms in it to give it extra flavor. I'm turning that off, actually. We just need it to be hot, not boiling. Stacy said she can smell it from here, but she's not cooking along tonight. I know, it smells so good. You're only about 8 blocks away, maybe you can smell it. All right, give this a stir. We don't want to burn it, but we want it to be, all the grains to be toasted on all the sides. So I'll continue to stir that while I start on the mushrooms now, which I started before, but that was too soon. All right, stems I'm saving for a stock. Let's do all the stems at once. I like to do assembly line style. I feel like it goes faster. So all stems at once. I'll do this container, maybe 2 or 3 more mushrooms. I washed these at a time. I am in the washing mushrooms camp. I don't find that it makes them more liquidy, but some people just brush them off to get out any dirt, and that's fine too. Alright, use your knuckles as a guide as you cut. Keep that thumb tucked in there. The best way to get even slices when you're slicing something thinly is to get your knuckles up against the knife. Make sure you keep your thumb tucked underneath. But it gives you control and it helps you space evenly. Alright, stirring this again, I can smell it kind of toasting up. It did, I don't know, did the sound change? I'm not sure yet. It's still making a sizzling sound. It's sticking a little bit. It did get maybe a little bit quieter. It feels different, like a little bit harder. All right. You can use your judgment. Like it just, you want it to be firm on the outside. That's the goal. All right, one more mushroom over here. And I'll get these into our hot oil over here. And I'm going to throw a little bit more of the rest of our pancetta in there too, to give some fat and flavor to the mushrooms, because that's going on top later on top of our risotto. All right, 2 more mushrooms from the other container. John says, Coco Huff, rice listener. I think that's my new tagline. It's true, there's so many things you can, like when you're working with sugar, if you're making candy, it sounds different. This might sound crazy. going too far here. It sounds different after a while. The bubbles start to make a different sound and have a different size, and that's how you can tell. It's more reliable than a temperature gauge sometimes. Cocoa Huff and Rice Listener. That's my next book, or my first book. Okay. All right, our mushrooms and our pancetta are in here. So, like I said, I want those mushrooms in a really hot pan. It's pretty hot. I could probably turn it up. And we want to get a nice caramelization on them. And I think our rice is quiet now. It's actually getting a little bit too brown. That's fine though. If you want it to be creamy white, which this won't be because of the mushrooms and everything, don't toast it quite so much. But this will have a nice flavor. And now we're ready to put our stock in, a little bit at a time. So I'm taking a half cup measure, and I'll take half cup of this, not with the dried mushrooms, just the stock, and pour it in there. And now our stirring begins. Whoa, there's something on the floor. Now our stirring begins. So what you want, I'm going to turn this down. You don't want it to evaporate too quickly because you want the rice to absorb. Ah, I skipped a step. Pretend I didn't do that. First, we're going to deglaze with wine. This is the all-important step that I always forget. So a little bit of white wine, about a half a cup. I'll actually measure it. I've gotten ahead of myself twice. Half a cup of wine, and we're going to scrape the bottom of this pan. That was not a critical error, but as you know from past weeks, we want to cook that alcohol out, and it's going to cook out a lot faster in a hot pan as opposed to a boiling liquid that's only 212 degrees. All right, so that all came up pretty easily. I'm going to do the edges, scrape it up so that all that flavor goes into your risotto. From the pancetta, from the shallots, and from the garlic. And make sure that the alcohol smell is gone before you continue. So that's going to take a couple seconds, so I'll toss the mushrooms as well. I'm going to put some salt on the mushrooms too. Get their liquid going. I'm always happy when they brown without letting out a ton of liquid. Sometimes you just can't help it. The pan fills with liquid and you have to cook it off. All right, so we've got some salt on there. We'll put some salt in our rice too. We want that to absorb salt as we go. And some pepper. Both hands. All right, so now it's just a game of back and forth. Liquid stirring until it's done. But what I wanted to say is, if you were making this for guests and you don't want to be standing an hour in front of your stove with guests, this is the point where you could stop. So you have your aromatics, your rice toasted, and the wine, and you've deglazed the pan. So now you could stop and let it sit and bring it up back to temperature and start adding hot liquid, and then you would only have from here to the end left to do. And it makes it a less intimidating dish to cook for guests. Or anytime. You could do this part in the morning and come back to it later. So that's been my secret trick, and it works well. It doesn't change the texture as far as I could tell. That has worked well for me. So the wine smell has cooked off, so we're ready to continue. So now back to our stock. Another half cup of stock. And we stir. So I like this pan. I actually have a copper risotto pan that has sort of a rounded bottom and it comes up on the sides. That's technically a risotto pan. I like this because it has high enough sides and I feel like everything evaporates a little bit better in the wider opening of the pan. But you want to find a sweet spot between like evaporating too quickly where nothing's happening with the rice and sitting and then getting mushy. So just stir, 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 medium heat. And and we're going to talk about what else you could do with this. So everything we've done so far is sort of the base recipe. If you wanted to make a lobster risotto, which is a very popular type of risotto, you could do exactly this with some lobster stock instead of this chicken stock. So you want to layer the flavors of whatever you're making to be the same. So we have a little bit of mushroom flavor in the broth, and we're doing mushrooms on top. With lobster, you would do lobster stock or shrimp stock, fish stock, something that goes with it, and then cook your lobster separately, maybe poach it in some butter and put that on top. That would be delicious. Maybe we should do that sometime. Same thing for shrimp. Last week 2 weeks ago, we talked about making shrimp stock out of your shells. You can buy these things as well. That would be an awesome way to make risotto. And then have your cooked shrimp on top, which Teresa made this week. Can we see pictures of your cooked shrimp, Teresa? That looked so delicious. And we were talking about not crowding the pan when you cook shrimp so they don't get watery, and that seemed to work really well. I saw a nice picture of that from Teresa. All right, I just added more stock, and I'm continuing to stir. So the rest of this video will be me stirring this rice. It takes a little while, but maybe 20 minutes total from this point. So let me get it onto the pan so you can see what's happening. So we have, it's not too soupy yet, but the starchiness is starting to coat the bottom of the pan. So if you look, each time I put liquid in, it's becoming more like a gravy consistency at the bottom. I hope you can see that. I see that it's kind of gray. And it's getting thicker while the rice gets softer, and that's what we're looking for. Start this up as well. And the fact that we toasted the rice means you won't end up with a mush. You want it to be, I don't know how to say that more nicely. You don't want it to be all one texture at the end. You want the al dente outside and the creamy inside and the creamy sauce. All right, a little bit more stock. Oh, Teresa says you can't post photos from here. I'm still learning all the rules for the Facebook Live. So she says she'll try after the video is posted. That makes sense. Facebook almost didn't let me post this because it mentioned wine. I guess there's rules about alcohol, but somehow it worked out. All right, I just put another cup of hot stock in here, and it's starting to get nice and creamy. Stir up our mushrooms. The mushrooms are looking good. They don't look too liquidy. Maybe a little bit. I'm going to give them a toss and then leave them alone and let them get brown. I haven't worked with these baby bellows that much. I do usually a white mushroom, but they just look good. They look like they give a nice color to the dish, so I went with that. So what else? Yeah, lobster. Oh, and another. So Yen from Denmark, and I don't think he's here today, but he said he loves an asparagus risotto, and that is also a classic dish. So an asparagus risotto with peas and Parmesan on top in the spring is so good, and maybe we'll do that as well sometime. I'm kind of craving lobster now. I don't know if it's really the season for lobster. Maybe it is. It's oyster season. That's exciting. Maybe we should do that too. All right, stirring away. What else do we have to do here? Okay, we have our cheese already grated and our butter is ready. And our chives. So we'll do all that in a few minutes. So for now, we're going to keep stirring. So tell me some of your, I'd love to know people's favorite fall dishes. I feel like the menu is already changing since our first week to now. As fall, as it gets colder, everyone wants warmer, heartier things to eat. All right, that looks so good. Let me see if I can make this not so bright, and then you can see it better. this one? No. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to make this less bright so you can see it. Oh, that's too not bright. Oh, what have I done? Okay, there we go. I did it. I did it. I did it. That's good. We went dark for a second. I think that's a better view, so you can sort of see the color of the risotto. You know, sometimes they're pure white. We can achieve that as well, but we put a lot of darker things in here, like a mushroom broth, and we let it caramelize. The technique would still be the same, just maybe a little bit less time toasting and a lighter broth. There's a chive in with the mushrooms. That's fine. Oops. All right, stirring away. In a few minutes, we're going to taste this. Oh, Vadim, we're talking about fall foods. Vadim said soups. That is a really good, that's a good one. I've already been craving soups. It's funny, I was going to talk about this. I've grated this cheese, Parmesan cheese, to put in the risotto at the end. And I wanted to tell everyone, save this end. When you grate Parmesan cheese from a block, always save the end to put in a soup. So we put that into a minestrone soup traditionally, or anything. It gives it such a nice flavor. So as we start talking about fall soups, just keep them in a bag. And it's funny, in the cooking group I belong to on Facebook, someone said their mother-in-law had thrown away all of their Parmesan rinds, and they were so upset, and I was like, I can relate, that makes so much sense. Those are like gold for flavor. So okay, Vadim, we'll talk about some soups this fall. And I think we have to start gearing up for Thanksgiving as well. Talk about some turkey pretty soon. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit, let me taste this actually. So you just sort of taste as you go. You can see it's getting creamier. The liquid is absorbing pretty quickly. The mushrooms are looking good. Let's taste. Okay. It still has a little way to go to absorb more liquid. So I'm gonna keep going. So you can see, this is another thing about like bubbles, and we were talking about the bubbles and the sounds. If I let this sit for a second, you can see that the bubbles are, it's bubbling like a gravy as opposed to water. So you can tell that it's getting, does that make sense? But you can tell that it's getting a little bit thicker as we go. And that's all the starch coming out of that short grain rice. Jen is here. Jen is I don't need to keep calling you out, but this was made with you in mind. So this dish itself is not vegetarian, but it can so easily be adapted to be vegetarian. So like I said in the beginning, instead of a pancetta, just an olive oil and your shallots and garlic and all that, and instead of a chicken stock, a nice mushroom stock, and everything else we've done here would be the same, and instantly this is a vegetarian meal, and it's such a delicious one with so much flavor. So that is why one of the reasons why we're doing this today. All right, but right now Jen said mushroom and asparagus risotto used to be one of my go-tos. That is so good. We were just talking about asparagus risotto as well. And it's so good. There's something about asparagus and risotto together in the spring that just tastes so good. Maybe a little lemon zest on top with the cheese. That's delicious. So the butter, the same way we did with the pan sauces, the butter is going to finish this off at the end and kind of thicken it up and give it a nice sheen as well. So that's going to be nice too. All right, we're stirring away. And our mushrooms are sizzling. I think this will be enough. I'm going to add some water to that pot just to be sure. I don't want to run out of hot liquid. This was 5 cups of liquid For 2 cups of rice, we may need a little bit more. But it's getting nice and creamy. So the reason I don't do the mushrooms, oh, those were good. Oh, this is the reason. I was about to say, the reason I don't do the mushrooms in this pan with the other vegetables first is because I want this nice brown crispiness. I don't know if you can see it. So if we just sort of like saute them and then boil them, they get a little bit waterlogged in the dish. You'll see this one right here. Oh, it's so nice and brown right there. That's what we want. So I'm using them more as a topping. And then the other thing, hi Melissa. Melissa's joined us too. The other thing, as you're sort of crafting your risotto, like I said, it could be anything. You could put any kind of food or stock or protein or anything, but as you're layering the flavors, you know, make them sort of match together, seafood with seafood, mushroom with mushroom, and sort of think about what should be boiled and what shouldn't. So anything that should not be boiled, like you want your shrimp to be nice and crispy, you would saute those separately and put them on top. Same with the mushrooms, same with lobster. Even the peas we're going to do at the end, because if they're already cooked, like frozen peas, you don't want them to get mushy in this whole process. So just throw them in at the end and they'll warm up in here. As opposed to, you know, the onions and shallots are in from the beginning because they're lending all that flavor from the beginning. So it's really however you want it is what I'm trying to say. Not too many rules. It's just really whatever you like. Okay, a little bit more stirring. I think we're getting close. These mushrooms look so good. I could just eat those mushrooms. I eat mushrooms on rice for breakfast a lot. I don't know if that's weird, but they're so delicious. Okay, I'm turning my liquid back on to add some water. I just don't want to run out of liquid. It varies from time to time how much you need. And we have all that flavor from the chicken already, so I'm not concerned about adding a little bit of water. That won't hurt it. So I know Melissa wants me to do some bean dishes. She requested them this week, so we're going to talk about that sometime too. Beans are such a good base for all different kinds of foods and flavors. So, and as we go into fall, that's one of my go-tos as well. You can make a cassoulet, a chili, there's so many possibilities. Okay. I know this is really exciting to watch, like back and forth, but this is how it goes, real time. Another cup of liquid, and I think we're getting close. So I'm going to chop my chives as well. So you really can't walk away from it. It does require some babysitting. But like I said, up to that wine step is something you can do in advance and walk away and come back to it. Oh, this is looking good. Let's look up close. It's looking like a nice sauce. It's creamy. I just tasted a little bit. It's getting to the right texture, just a little bit longer. I'm turning my mushrooms off. Those are good. The risotto needs some salt. So like any starch, like a potato or rice, you want to get the salt in before the end so it absorbs in with the liquid. Pasta the same. Okay. Another cup. It's absorbing faster now, we'll say that. So each cup of liquid is getting in there pretty quickly. Okay. All right, we're going to chop the chives. That's going to go on a little bit in there and a little bit on top. So these are from my garden. I love growing chives. I am not much of a gardener, but they come back on their own every spring. You don't have to do a thing. It's like my kind of gardening. And they're still good at this time of year. So I usually cut them all down probably in June, chop them the way I'm about to do now, and dry them. So I have one whole harvest of chives, and I use the purple flowers and dry those as well, because those have a really strong chivy flavor, and I save those too. And then they all grow back, and you have chives again, and they're the best. It's so easy, as opposed to everything else in my garden, which was not so easy. I'm going to cut these in half, and then line up the cut edges to get a nice amount. Oh, let's stir it out. Don't forget to stir it at the same time. This is where everything starts to come together at once, and we got to keep going. That looks so good. That's starting to look like you want individual grains, but you don't want them, you want them a little soft looking. And it's expanding in volume as well right now. And it sounds different, John. John was making fun of me. I think this rice is sounding different than it was before. Okay, back to our chives. I once read that a chef, he was like the master chef in a culinary school. He gave people chives to chop, and then based on how they did it, decided whether they should get into the school or not. So I'm always very careful when I chop my chives. I want these little round tubes. Not that the chef is here right now, but I always think of that. Uh-oh, I'm fired. There's one long one. And this just adds a fresh brightness to everything. All right, a couple extra ends. Put those to the side. Come back to our risotto. Things are going on now. Hi, Nikki. How are you? We are stirring up our risotto and adding liquid a little bit at a time, and it's starting to come to the right consistency. So the grains are a little bit softer. They're a little bit plumper. Plumper, is that a word? Yeah, and the liquid is starting to look thickened to hold it all together. Taste this again. So taste as you go. Make sure you like the salt level. Make sure the grains are, oh, it's perfect. That is actually perfect. The grains are al dente on the outside, a little bit of a bite, but it's soft. There's nothing like that you would think it's too hard as rice goes. So actually, this always happens this way. Like you're going along and then all of a sudden it's done and everything's done at once. So when you get risotto at a restaurant, you sort of see it all different ways. Sometimes it's thicker, like it keeps its shape, and sometimes it's a little bit more on the soupy side. I tend to like it more on the soupy side. So I'm going to absorb this last bit, add a little bit more liquid, stir it in, and then we'll add the rest of everything. So I don't know how to show this to you up close, the texture of it, but I guess you're going to have to make it. Can you see that? Oh yeah, you sort of can. It very quickly changed a few seconds ago that the grains got plump and look like, they look more like orzo all of a sudden, if you're familiar with cooked orzo, which is a pasta. And that just looks so good, and it's perfectly cooked. All right, so, yeah, perfect. I'm gonna grab my peas. This is nothing fancy. These are just frozen peas. I'm going to break this up. Probably put half the bag in. And those will immediately get hot. And a little bit more stock. So yeah, peas and asparagus, that would be so good. Yeah, about half the bag. You wouldn't want those in the whole time. They would lose their greenness. We'll turn the heat down because we're done. I like to stir risotto with a wooden spoon. It just feels more authentic. I learned something. I knew risotto was from Milan, but I did not know that it was invented in 1914. I thought it would have been much older than that, but I learned that today. So that was an interesting fact. It was a fairly recent recipe. All right, so now you can see with the peas in there, I'm going to add a little bit more stock just to bring it back to a soupy consistency. I turned my burner way down. We don't want to toast, we don't want to caramelize at this point. You know, we've done all the deglazing and the caramelizing. So I think in all, I'm going to use that last bit of water that I mixed in with my stock. So in all, we're at about 8 cups, 7 or 8 cups of liquid. And the porcini mushrooms, the dried porcini mushrooms that we infused the stock with are still in there. And maybe I'll cut those up and use them for another recipe. But it gave some mushroom flavor to the whole dish. Okay, that looks super good. Now, we're almost done, but the two, going back to the base recipe, the two things we have to add are the Parmesan and the butter. So I'm going to add the butter first. I made this once for someone who was not able to eat dairy, and I put, this might sound weird, mayonnaise instead, which added an interesting, they couldn't have the butter. So that was half a stick of butter. I'm going to whisk that in. But the mayonnaise, it gave it the fat, it gave it some savory flavor. That was pretty good. It gave it an interesting creamy texture. Don't tell anyone I said that. I think I lost my Italian card a couple weeks ago, and I just probably lost it again. Butter is the traditional thing to put in. So that half a stick just melted right in there. And you can see it's like shiny and delicious looking now. All right, those peas look nice and bright. Maybe I would have made more mushrooms if I wasn't rushing, because you could put some in and then put some on top. We're just going to put some on top. Or make some diced ones to put in and then the sliced ones on top because they look pretty. All right, the butter is in, and this is a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. I'll probably put half of this in, so half a cup, and then we'll put the rest on top. And that gives a nice salty umami flavor to everything. Just let that melt and we're done. So I'll put some chives in as well and some on top too. Chives just make it nice and everything looks so pretty. Oh, and they smell really good. Okay, move this out of the way. All right, so we were talking in the beginning about, risotto seems intimidating because you have to stir for so long and you can't leave it, but it's been 45 minutes, plus I did a lot of talking, so from start to finish, that's not so bad, in terms of making a meal, especially if you can, leave it and come back to it as well. So we have our finished dish. I'm going to plate this up and show you what it looks like. So I have the dish here. Oh, that looks so good, I have to say. That looks really good. I'll just use this spoon. A little bit heavy. All right, put this in the middle of our plate. Alright, we want it sort of in a mound in the middle. It's not that soupy actually. It tends to just keep absorbing, so you would have to keep adding liquid, but it looks like a nice consistency. David says it looks amazing. It is amazing. It tastes amazing, I have to tell you. Alright. And we're going to put some of these crispy mushrooms. Let me change so you can see that. Crispy mushrooms and pancetta on top. Oh yeah, that looks good. I'll do about half of what we made on there. All right. So this is our finished dish. I'm gonna tilt that a little bit. We have our risotto, which is soft and creamy, and our crispy mushrooms on top. Oh my God, it's really good, I have to say. That is delicious. So I hope you'll try this week. And like I said, any combination of things, if you don't like peas, or if you can find good asparagus right now, that would be amazing. Teresa says it looks so good. It really is good, I have to say. So good. But any mix of things you like, I'd love to see your variations on risotto this week. I had to try a mushroom too. That is delicious. So, as usual, please send me your pictures. I love to see them. It's made me so happy all week talking to everybody about what they've cooked. Karen sent me some interesting recipes this week too, and it's been a really fun conversation. And I will post something for next week as well, and I'd love to see your requests, holiday requests coming up, whatever we want, we can tackle it. And again, I'm Nicole Petrandria Huff. Stacy says, thank you, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. Nicole Petrandria Huff for CocoHuff.com, CoCoHough, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you.